Good evening, everyone,
Good evening.
Good
and
evening.
welcome to Watson Caring Science Institute Southeast Regional Consortium presentation, Weaving Caring Science into the AACN Essentials, that will be presented by two phenomenal caring science scholars, their leaders, as well as professors, Dr. Sara Horton-Deutsch and Dr. Danny Willis. On behalf of the Watson Caring Science Institute, the Watson Caring Science Institute Consortia, and the Southeast Regional Consortium, we are grateful for your energetic presence this evening. And before we begin, we would like to engage you in a Caritas centering exercise. This is another way to enter into and cultivate loving kindness and equanimity towards yourself and others. Such cultivated preparatory work helps to manifest Caritas energy of love and compassion, elevating a higher, deeper awareness and presence, transcending fear and low energy, ego-dominated controlling thoughts. Now, for those of you who are comfortable in doing so, I invite you to close your eyes to the outer world and open your inner eyes, your heart center. As you continue to take deep but gentle breaths on the out breath, release everything in the outer world that you brought into this space. Then release the inner chatter. Now just be still, breathing in and out, emptying out and filling up. From this quiet place, one is connecting to the rhythm of the universe, in that everything is rising up and falling away, just like breath. In connecting with the natural rhythm of all of life, one is opening self to connection with the universe and the infinite wellspring of gratitude, loving kindness, and equanimity. In breathing, we are both inhaling and exhaling. We are releasing that which has already passed, opening up vibratory space for new breath, new experiences, new insights. Exhaling is a conscious letting go, surrendering to that which is. Inhaling is opening to and connecting with the larger, deeper, complex patterns of life energy in the infinite universe. This simple, brief act of pausing and an awareness of our breathing in the midst of our busy pace can shift our consciousness, preparing us for whatever is in front of us to do or be in the present moment. Finally, when you are ready, ever so gently, return to this space, more open, more present, more alert, and centered to receive this awesome presentation this evening. Namaste.
Thank you, Cheryl. This is Gloria Little Mouse, and I have the honor of introducing Dr. Sara Horton-Deutsch and Dr. Danny Willis. Dr. Sara Horton-Deutsch comes to us from the University of San Francisco School of Nursing and Health Professions, and she is also the director of the University of San Francisco Kaiser Permanente Partnership. She is a faculty associate of Watson Caring Science Institute, co-director, and the Caritas Leadership Program. I also put their emails down below. If you have any questions that they're not able to answer, you can always reach out to either of them. Dr. Danny Willis is Dean and Professor of University of Rhode Island College of Nursing, Global Well Becoming Leader, and Elevating the Consciousness of the Planet. And this is Dr. Danny Willis's email. So I have the PowerPoint presentation on my laptop. So Sara or Danny, just let me know when you are ready for me to move forward.
Thank you so much, everyone, for being here, first and foremost, and for the organization and the intentionality that is behind this evening. Thank you so much, Gloria. And everyone, Cheryl, Diane, everyone who's been a part of bringing this together. It's been a really wonderful opportunity to work closely with Sara and to be able to bring this forward tonight. So we're really interested in talking with you about how we are approaching integrating caring science with the American Association of Colleges of Nursing essentials for professional nursing education. And at the end of this workshop or retreat, participants will be able to critique caring science nursing paradigm in relation to medical science, as well as the ANA's definition of nursing, which we find very interesting, and I'm sure you do as well, and we'll talk about that. And discover the integration of the AACN essentials in caring science nursing education, examining their roles in both curriculum development and identifying common education strategies across nursing schools. And then explore practical applications of caring science and the 10 Caritas processes in health institutions and nursing education. So we'll move on to the next slide. And we're going to play this. I hope it has sound. Okay, so I'm interested in, maybe we can just pause it here, but I'm interested in what you all experienced or saw and what came up for you as you were watching this. Words to describe it. Anyone want to share?
I'll share, Danny.
Thanks, Cheryl.
I think it's beautiful, you know, and I want to say this too. I think we sometimes we get too attached to technology, you know, while all this creativity is within us. But it reminded me of, well, as I watched it and the sound did play, I was humming in my heart Willy Wonka, Pure Imagination. So it was all over the place, you know, come and go with me to this place of pure imagination. And it reminded me of a beautiful poem that I heard years ago and I used in leadership. It's called Lessons from the Geese, and how the geese, they fly in formation, they support of one another. And when one geese fall out of formation, they don't leave that geese alone. That, you know, they step back and hover that geese with compassion and loving kindness until they're strong enough to move forward with them. And that's the lens in which I see the nursing profession, how the deconstruction and reconstruction is required that start with what you all are talking about this evening, weaving caring science into the AACN essential, because it must start with nursing education.
Yeah.
That's great. Thank you so much, Cheryl. Beautiful. And how about Sandra? I believe I saw your hand up.
Yes, when I first saw this in real life, it scared me. But the beauty of all these birds in flight and joining together with each other, and then one group is then intertwining with the next to make this beautiful community that they live in peace together. And that's what I see.
Beautiful. Anyone else want to share?
Yes, I will.
Great.
I agree.
Thank you.
Yes, I agree with Sandra. I mean, seeing it in person is also just a whole nother experience. But I think it's just really amazing to see the communication that they all have and how it looks so peaceful, but I know there's probably so much cues and communication between all of that to make it happen from every bird in there. So I see peace, but I know that it takes a lot of coordination.
Great, wonderful. So a lot of things that you touched on are also what we wanted to point out here. And it really is a reflection of nursing, right? It really is a reflection of caring science and a unitary worldview. So I'm going to ask Gloria if she'll bring up the next slide, and we'll look at the notion of the synchrony is one of the things that we see in this model of this murmuration is a lot of synchrony, a lot of flow, dynamic flow. Someone put in the chat also that, what was the term that you used? Someone used a term, flow of nature and connectedness. Creative emergence is something that we see in this murmuration as well. And so one of the things that I think is really interesting is to think about what we mean when we talk about unitary caring. And unitary just is a term, at least I've come to believe over time, that recognizes the connection, the interconnection of all of humanity and environment, that they are integral and there is no separation, really. And then caring, when we think about caring, of course, we all know this, but it just recognizes this deeper relational worldview. Jean's earlier work and her thoughts on transpersonal caring moments that go beyond the ego and go beyond the nurse, but transforms the entire energetic field. It's conscious, it's intentional, it brings forward us and our authenticity to be present, and we are focused on caring and healing for all. And so Marlene Smith, who is a unitary caring theorist and scholar, who has a background and studied with and worked in the Rogerian, or Martha Rogers Science of Unitary Human Beings, but also worked with Jean and has worked with Jean over the years, really brought together the synthesis of the unitary worldview coming from Rogers and caring coming from Watson, in particular, Watson Caring Science. And she talks about that when we step into unitary caring science, what we are stepping into as nurses is manifesting intention. So what is our intention? Appreciating pattern, and pattern is just the unfolding or the whole as it is evolving and dawning and unfolding, like the synchrony that we saw, this creative emergence. We attend to dynamic flow as all is in flux, all is changing. That is the one constant, is that everything is in change. And then we're inviting this creative emergence. We don't know where it ends up, but what we're open to is allowing for this emergence to occur. And it's all a creative process. Nursing is a creative process where we bring the best of ourselves and our authenticity in the art of our nursing. But we are also combining that with the knowledge. The knowledge is what distinguishes us among other healthcare professions in terms of what we bring to the encounter, and then experiencing the infinite. That there are no boundaries, right? That it's really an infinite world, a universe without boundaries. And so that means that the consciousness field is everywhere, and that our contribution in our own consciousness and our individual consciousness begins to make up that collective consciousness. So just really, really important foundational kind of perspective when we begin to think about the work of unitary caring science and unitary caring art and practice and unitary caring spirit. So moving on to the next slide, the AACN Essentials in Caring Science is an opportunity to look at the essentials that were proposed by the American Association of Colleges of Nursing, and using caring science as a way to integrate and weave into these essentials the foundational platform for the most mature conception of our discipline and profession. What the AACN Essentials do is they really prepare us with a standardization and a framework that really speaks to a consistent foundation of basic core knowledge of the discipline, no matter where a nursing student is educated. It provides a comprehensive scope that covers a broad range of competencies that are not just technical in nature, thank goodness, but yet include things like leadership and resilience and self-care and policy and research and scholarliness, which we know are all very necessary in order for nurses to really thrive and be able to survive and bring forth the best of themselves as nurses in promoting caring and healing for all. It's also about patient-centered care, and it's about the advancement of the profession and using all ways of knowing as our basis, and also the deep respect that we have for practice and the preparation for practice. So it's really a framework. But without the nursing disciplinary perspective, the question becomes, are these just skills? Are these just knowledge domains? And so what we wanted to do is really talk about how caring science is the foundation. Next slide. So foundational to the theory of human caring, I'm speaking to the tribe, so you all know this, but foundational to the human caring, unitary caring perspective is Jean has really positioned the ethic of belonging based on her study and work of the philosopher Levinas. And Levinas talks about the starting point for all science, or the primary principle is the ethic of belonging. And that is that we are belonging as first principle. And that's prior to subjectivity or ontology, that we all belong to this universal field of cosmic love. It's a universal field from which we all come and to which we all return. So that very first principle is belonging. The second principle that Jean talks about and positions for us is the ethic of face. And the ethic of face is that face-to-face encounter, that face-to-face connection. And you contrast that with a totalizing view. So what are we called upon to do in the face of the other, especially when one is vulnerable or one is susceptible, which we all are to vulnerability. So how do we show up and how are we authentic and caring and loving and facilitative of caring and healing for all in our face-to-face encounters? And then drawing upon the work of Lokstrup, she talks about the ethic of hand, where literally and metaphorically we hold the life force of another in our own hands. And so bringing together the ethic of belonging as primary principle, the ethic of face and the encounter, and what we're called to do in the face of the other, and the ethic of hand, where we literally and metaphorically are holding the life force. So very foundational to this work. We had this opportunity to work with colleagues from across 4 colleges or schools of nursing in the United States. The AACN had a call for colleges to present proposals to integrate activities and learning and curriculum that would focus on 4 key ideas that are essential in the essentials. And that is resilience of the nurse, the well-being of the nurse and the environment, self-care practices, and leadership, knowing who we are, professional identity, and how are we leading in the profession. It just so happens that of the 10 schools that were chosen by AACN, 4 of the colleges had based their proposals in caring science, which was very interesting. So we brought together a group of people to really look at and understand how they had positioned themselves in a caring science model to speak to these basic core essential concepts that are central to the American Association of Colleges of Nursing. Next slide. So you can download a free copy of the AACN Essentials if you don't have them at this website. And we'll go on into our next slide. And what we have here are, there are 10 domains. So whether you're practicing at level 1, which is entry into the profession, or level 2, which they call advanced practice, you have 10 domains of knowledge and competencies that are central. The first is really important because it is the foundation or the base for everything else, which is the knowledge for nursing practice. And this is where unitary caring science comes in. But unitary caring science really threads throughout all of the domains. In particular, we highlighted 4 of these for this presentation, but each of the areas really are integral with caring science, and an articulation of how they are integral is necessary. But knowledge for nursing practice is domain 1, and domain 2 is person-centered care. So you can imagine in unitary caring science how that relational model really relates to the person-centered care piece. Professionalism. Professionalism is really all about the ethics. And so we talked about earlier the ethic of belonging, the ethic of face, and the ethic of hand. And professionalism is beyond those 3 ethics, but that's the foundation for it from which we can branch out and grow. And then in domain 10, we have personal, professional, and leadership development. And I think all of us will attest to how important it is for that personal development of the nurse as a Caritas nurse, as a Caritas leader, and what that does for professional development when one comes from that perspective, how they are grounded in their profession, and then how that contributes to the advancement of the profession. It contributes to the advancement of patient-centered care, of quality, of leadership, of all those things that we're looking for in the practice arena. And then the leadership development is a lifelong process, engaged in lifelong learning, continual professional development, continual self-development. And we're going to talk a little bit more about some of those in this presentation as we move forward. So on the next slide, wanted to highlight the revised definition of nursing from the ANA. And in particular, in this slide, you will see pointed out in blue, appears in blue in my screen, a couple of words that are very, very important for us to look at. So nursing integrates and here is the new terminology in the definition, art and science of care. So for the first time in the ANA definition, art and science of care is made explicit. And it focuses on the protection, promotion, and optimization of health and human functioning, prevention of illness and injury, facilitation of healing, again, caring science, and alleviation of suffering through compassionate presence, again, caring science. Nursing is the diagnosis and treatment, not so much about that, but of human responses to advocacy in the care of individuals, families, communities, and populations. And look at this, in recognition of the connection of all humanity. So unitary caring science is literally in the definition of the American Nurses Association's nursing definition. Thinking about that whole domain of knowledge that we were talking about, knowledge for practice, professionalism, all those different areas, person-centered practice, safety, quality, any of those domains really can be accentuated and amplified, and we can learn more about ourselves as nurses when we turn toward reflection. As you know, reflection allows us to develop our own self-awareness. It creates a milieu in which we ask questions and we inquire and we look at our actions and we look at our experiences and the context in which those experiences occur. And we have a moment to pause and reflect in order to enhance our self-awareness, to identify strengths, to identify areas where we may need to grow or we need to do something differently, perhaps. So really important is this reflection piece in caring science. It is a key to excellence in nursing. So we begin to ask ourselves questions like, how does the curriculum balance the teaching, the science part, all the theory, the evidence-based practice, the analytics, even the hardcore things like pathophysiology, but balancing that with and prioritizing and privileging the art of nursing therapeutics, those things that are compassionate presence, those things that are loving kindness and equanimity, those things that are self-care, those things that are attending to the positive and negative in people's experiences and their journeys. It's the allowing for and holding that faith and hope for the other and working from within their frame of reference. I was just saying to Sara a little bit earlier today, it's really this notion of the spirit of nursing, right, which is Watson's caring science, unitary caring science. It's the science of nursing, which is Watson caring science and other theoretical and scientific perspectives and multiple ways of knowing. And it's also the art of nursing, right? So it's really the science, the art, and the spirit of nursing that we're talking about. And then learning activities really should not just be about the science and the cognitive, because in caring science, we're really about the heart and the movement of the spirit. And so how do we bring in the movement of the spirit and the artistic and the different ways of knowing, personal, aesthetic, spiritual, moral, ethical? How do we bring those in and balance in this real fluid way of being and praxis with the empirical? Next slide. And then how do we help our students really develop a holistic perspective or a holistic mindset that is unitary in nature to help students understand human meaning and living in context? The word used in the ANA definition is human functioning, but human functioning, at least for me, is not the best word. But it's this notion of how do we help our students understand the whole human being, right, within the context of their environments and the integral nature that they have with their environments. And what does that mean in terms of their ability to live a life well and to die well? How do you approach whole person care? We break it down for clarity's sake into the psychological, the social, the spiritual, the cultural, but really, in a holistic perspective, we don't break it down. We literally attend to whole person. And how are students evaluated? What do we need to see? What do they need to do with the knowledge? What is the praxis piece that they bring forth, the being, the knowing, and the doing, right, in terms of their competencies? So next. And then how do our teaching methodologies, how we go about engaging with students, whether it be through case studies, whether it be through clinical experiences, whether it be through journaling or keeping a diary, whether it be through, interviews and reflection, whatever. But how do we really bring forth and foster the students' recognition of their own inherent well-being, their own inherent resilience, their own inherent ways of knowing, in this human caring transpersonal moments that they experience themselves in? And how do they really begin to weave together this notion of the individual within the context of community, in the context of family, within the context of a larger humanity? And how do students really begin to learn about social determinants? The 10 Caritas processes are a way of being and becoming a professional nurse. And I think we're all familiar with these, but just to reflect quickly, that at the very core of it is that we have to sustain the humanistic altruistic values through our loving kindness, that we show up with loving kindness, we show up with open heart, we show up understanding that love is the greatest healer, the greatest energy that heals. That compassion of seeing the suffering in the other and being there to respond to that ethic of face and that ethic of hand, and equanimity, that, we are working on ourselves and we are becoming more self-evolved ourselves such that we can show up in any situation and have that place of authentic presence and calm, which is healing because that begins to pattern the whole energetic field. right? Always talk about how we come in and really our energetic and our field is going to affect the entire field. And being authentically present, that we're not distracted by many things, but we are here, we are with you, we are listening, we are attending, we are knowing who you are, and that we're working within your own system to understand your faith and your belief and your hope model. And what is that? And how do we meet you where you are and honor that subjective inner life world of yours? And then, of course, being sensitive to self and others, cultivating your own spiritual practices. The spiritual practices really are the evolution of human consciousness, right? Such that we are beginning to transcend the ego and we're beginning to understand the human connection of all and the power and the energy that comes from recognizing spirit to spirit communication. And I will not go through all of these, but then, creating a healing environment, I think that's one of the most important. My background is a psychiatric nurse, so I have always felt that my core function was creating a healing environment, and that I, as the nurse in a caring, healing presence, bring forth that environment. I am the environment, but everything around is the environment. And so creating these healing environments that allow for the emergence and the synchrony and the creativity within those authentic, caring, healing moments is critical. Next slide. And there are many award-winning magnet clinical settings, and we just wanted to talk a little bit about this. And this was written about in the paper, and we consulted with them as well. So I'm going to go through this really quick and then transition over to Sara. Next slide. What can we take from this? Well, the caring science affiliated organizations, and in particular, two that I mentioned are Stanford and Kaiser Permanente, but really, they really focus on disciplinary knowledge and creating those caring, healing environments. And so bringing those two perspectives forth and making that very present. But it's also about the leaders and the people in the system through the Caritas coaches and the leaders that are being developed in these caring science affiliated organizations. And then there's, of course, some recognition and awards that come along with that, like as the systems evolve and change and patient care changes and quality and all those things occur. It changes the organizational culture and practice, and it brings theory to the practice and bridges the gap between the academic and the practice world. Next slide. So AACN invited, again, a caring science organizing framework. We worked with AACN closely. The paper was published in the Journal of Professional Nursing, but it's really about bringing together the highest level for professional practice and locating all of our essentials within this most mature paradigm of nursing's evolution. So what an opportunity, right, that we had to work with AACN to really lift up and honor our core foundational perspective of unitary caring science. It was a real honor to do that. Next slide. And we're going to turn it over to Sara. Thank you.
Thanks, Danny. So go ahead, next slide, Gloria, please. So what did we begin? This was a 1.5 to 2 year long process of figuring out how we were going to want to do this. And we started by looking at some of the work that was previously done, and Peggy Chin and Marlene Smith had begun to look a little bit about at the knowledge domains and how these exemplars fit with nursing education. And so what we did was we built on this table and we looked at not just caring science or Dr. Watson's work, but other caring theories and how they fit with the 10 domains. And so we thought this was a good high-level starting point for example, when you're teaching quality and safety, to not just talk about caring science, but to talk to Joanne Duffy about Joanne Duffy's quality of care model. I mean, Joanne's work is built upon Dr. Watson's model, but how often do we, when we don't, I always say we don't think of Lazarus' work on stress and coping and only teach that in psychology, right? We use that theory across many disciplines and professions. And yet so often we don't talk about our own experts within nursing when we're talking about quality and safety. And Joanne Duffy has a beautiful model on quality and care. And we recommend that that's something that we introduce our students to, that they know the nurses that are doing theoretical work in these areas. Another example is Lowson's work on informatics and healthcare technologies, which is so timely at this point in time. But he has beautiful technological competencies in how to bring caring into the classroom through the use of technology. So those are examples of bringing other theoretical works into your courses, and it's not going to be just the 4 domains that we developed, but there's ways to bring it into all of the different domains. We only explicated 4 maps that I'll show with you in a minute. Next slide, please. Next thing we did was we looked at the concepts that AACN identified as the core concepts and how those core concepts relate to theoretical works in nursing. And this table gives you a sense of the theoretical works that you can introduce your students to. Of course, Benner has a fabulous clinical judgment model, and she teaches clinical reasoning, right? And there's lots of theorists who've talked about compassionate care, communication, really human caring theory, and Swanson's work are beautiful. When we think about Chen and Kramer has done such a beautiful job of contributing to inclusivity and really explicating that ethic of belonging is who all are we caring for, and the deservingness of all people for care. And again, I won't go through all of these, but these are theoretical works that we invite you to introduce your students to when you're teaching these concepts. Next slide, please. And as we came to do this, I wanted to spend a little bit of time on talking about knowledge for nursing practice, because that is really domain 1 in the essentials. But for us, it's like the foundational domain. It's the roots that the tree grows from. And it's so important for us to understand the difference between the discipline and the profession of nursing. I think for the last 25 years, we have been teaching the profession of nursing for the most part, and we haven't spent a lot of time talking about the discipline of nursing. I learned about the discipline of nursing in my undergraduate program, but it's just as we moved more and more towards evidence-based practice and scientific and empirical knowledge alone, we forgot about and let go of some of the key aspects of nursing that make nursing unique and different. And so the discipline of nursing, if we're going to move back to teaching the discipline of nursing, we need to be introducing the theoretical works and what counts as knowledge development. We need to be talking about the timeless values and heritage of nursing. We need to talk about the ontology of caring for the whole person and what it means to be a nurse, and how does my being influence the way I show up and care for others? And am I attending to my own being and caring about my own being as a foundation for caring for others? What is that philosophical orientation that we bring to the work that is unique from other disciplines? And what are the innovative methodologies and now pedagogies that we can bring into our nursing education and practice settings that help to reinforce the discipline of nursing and not just the profession of nursing? Next slide, please. Some other things we thought about as we were doing this work is that we needed to rethink about some of the language we use in nursing. So in the following slides, I'm going to talk about a little bit, not just about, and the discipline of nursing really invites us to think about our professional ways of being and becoming and always evolving, we are never finished growing as nurses. So we suggested some refinements to the language, that we not just consider competency, but also literacy, that we not only think about objective learning, but also subjective learning, and that we not only think about developing the nurse and introducing educational coursework and skill development in terms of developed and well developed, but really from a disciplinary perspective, it's more about informative, formative, and transformative learning, that it's always evolving, that we're never really there. And we can really convey that full dynamic aspect of learning when we use that language. Next slide, please. So a little bit more on expanding competency and to include literacy invites us to, again, think beyond. I always think of competency, we think you reach, I say in undergraduate nursing education, I think that's a C, right? And in graduate nursing education, that's a B. But we aspire for so much more for our nurses, and to become ever evolving in their literacy and never stop learning. And so one way we can do this is to expand caring literacy is to include other things besides empirical learning and knowing, but what are knowledge and images and symbols that reflect and interpret and construct meaning for our students in their work. And objective and subjective, we're not just looking at the objective learning, the measurable, observable things of learning, but we're also asked to consider the emotional context of learning that is not always measurable, but it's that affective learning, right? That we're not just doing cognitive and psychomotor learning, but we're also including affective learning. Next slide, please. And this is really adapted from Bloom's taxonomy, and Bloom identified the importance of not just objective and our cognitive learning and psychomotor learning, but affective learning. But how, if you go back and look at your course syllabus, I encourage you to see how much of the affective domain are you pulling into your nursing courses. And this is a place to begin as you begin to transform your curriculum is, are you balancing the cognitive and the psychomotor learning with the affective learning, the ontology, the importance of being and how we show up as nurses and what makes us unique and different than the other disciplines in healthcare? Next slide, please. An informative, formative, and transformative really conveys that full scope of dynamic teaching and learning. It socializes students to ongoing professional formation. It incorporates experiential learning, and it helps students to be more adaptive to change. We know that we're called to address resiliency and well-being in nursing education, but we need to show up in more flexible and more coaching and mentoring ways that the AACN is calling for us to do, instead of being the expert or the sage on the stage, is the old language that's used, but we're not just there to lecture and give information, but it's more of a reciprocal process with our students. It's always informing their formation, and it empowers students to be more independent, more critical, and more reflective. Next slide. So how are you being caring with your students? That is our invitation to consider for ourselves. And we know that the student-faculty relations become a core component of learning, that we need to integrate the art and science and humanities into nursing education, and that pedagogies that focus on belonging, inclusion, and ways of being and becoming happen through things like reflection, authentic dialogue, modeling our best selves. So that's really where the self-care starts with ourselves. How are we caring for ourselves and modeling self-care for our students and being really authentic and real with them? And how do we practice caring in the classrooms, not just in the clinical settings, but how are we practicing caring in the classrooms with our students? And all of this invites other ways of considering our formative and summative assessments, which AACN is asking us to do. They're asking us to really look at how we're assessing student learning and how we're more actively engaging students in the learning process. Next slide, please. So we're going to talk just a few minutes about formative and summative assessment. Next slide. So Watson's Caring Science teaches us that authentic caring requires both competence and compassion. And our approach to assessment embodies the full principles of holistic evaluation that that we look at growth and over time and our students' capacity for caring, their critical thinking, and their professional formation. That it really involves intentional presence, that faculty bring their full attention and authentic care to the evaluation process, recognizing that each student's unique journey um, and that we can't I don't know. I think we're all challenged with how are we, if we're doing competency-based education, then having these semesters where students have to get to a certain point in a certain time, how can we may still have to have those because we have our formal structures, but how can we creatively use competency-based education to be a little more flexible and fluid, allowing some students to move forward perhaps more quickly, and maybe others are needing more time, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. It's just where they are on the continuum, and that we can do that in a very compassionate way. And then finally, co-creation of learning, students and faculty working together as partners in the learning process, with assessment serving as a dialogue and a conversation, and it really focusing on growth and development through time rather than judgment. So the formative assessment process is, as you all are very familiar with, is that learning that happens along the way. It's students learning during instructional process, and it happens during in our classroom cultures and our clinical cultures, and it's that continuous improving, and it supports diverse learning styles where we're more adaptive. And it's those small stake activities. Next slide, please. And these are all examples of formative learning assessments. So I ask you to think, how many of these, are you already using? Hopefully you're already using a lot of these. I do a lot of think, pair, and share because you can do that in very large classrooms. You can have 100 students in the classroom do a think, pair, and share. You can do really short 1-minute papers with a large group of students. Are we engaging our students in peer review, in journaling? Are we asking them to bring in more aesthetics into learning through poetry, art, and music? And how are we utilizing group discussions and projects? Self-care plans are really an important part of students' education if they're going to really embrace the ontology of caring for themselves as the foundation of caring for others. Having a foundational course where students begin with their own care and how are they caring for themselves as a foundation of caring for others is really important. And how is this all integrated in clinical practice? Next slide, please. And then summative assessment, we all know that's that high stakes grading at the end of the semester, and it's the conclusion, and it's that which extends to learning. The learning objectives have been met and is often used for making decisions about a student's progression. But it also ensures that the educational system is delivering on the promise to educate the student, which is what we are all here to do. Next slide, Therese. And examples of formative assessments, of course, final exams and papers have been the traditional way, but also in more recent years, there's more portfolios that are being used. Some of this occurs in simulation and labs and in presentations. Next slide, Therese. So as we're coming, I want to give you some examples of how you can take the caring processes, the Caritas processes, and integrate them into your teaching and learning at the different levels. So for an entry-level student, you might begin by assessing their use of language, of caring language, identifying evidence of Caritas practices and basic patient care experiences. And an example of this might be students begin to comprehend this by recognizing loving kindness in actions when observing their preceptor speaking gently to a confused elderly patient, using the patient's preferred name and maintaining eye contact while explaining each procedure with patience and respect. And this could be assessed formatively through guided reflective discussions and summatively, perhaps during a synthesis paper. So this is an example of how we can build them and then in advanced level nursing education. Boy, you're getting ahead of me. Go ahead, Gloria. An advanced level caring science exemplar for the same Caritas process is that the nurse critically analyzes and synthesizes the Caritas practice across complex patient scenarios, developing the ability to mentor others and integrating these caring processes while conducting scholarly inquiry into the transformative outcomes of caring, healing relationships. And an example might be that the student demonstrates loving kindness by creating a comprehensive care plan for a homeless patient that addresses not only medical needs, but also coordinates social services and housing support, and then mentors staff on how such holistic caring approaches transform both the patient outcomes and the healthcare team's understanding of healing relationships. An example of a formative assessment for this could be a reflective journal, and a summative assessment could possibly be a comprehensive portfolio. Next slide. Caritas process 2. For an entry level, it's about foundational awareness of faith and hope and how the creation of authentic presence supports healing relationships. An example of this might be an entry-level nurse learns to sit quietly with a patient experiencing fear before surgery, offering genuine presence rather than rushing to provide solutions or distractions. And this formative assessment could occur through a peer review and collaborative reflection sessions. And a summative assessment might be an essay on impact. Next slide. In Caritas process 3, or 2 for an advanced level student, would be for the student to deepen their understanding of the unitary field perspective in their practice, demonstrating how spiritual care emerges from compassionate presence. An example of this is an advanced level student enters the patient's room where family members are grieving an unexpected diagnosis and immediately senses the energetic field of despair, consciously shifting her own presence to a space of faith and hope. And she guides the family through a moment of sharing, shared breathing, and intentional connection, demonstrating to a student observer how compassionate presence can transform the healing environment and create space for spiritual healing. A formative assessment might be a video reflection or peer observation, and a summative assessment might be 360-degree feedback. And finally, our last example is Caritas process 3, which is about that trust, that self, and that intuitive judgment, and being open to all ways of knowing. And an entry-level student feels an inner sense that something isn't quite right with a patient who appears stable and learns to voice this concern to the nurse rather than dismissing the feeling, discovering the patient was indeed developing early signs of complications. And this could be formatively assessed through mindfulness exercises with debriefing on bodily sensations and emotional responses, and summatively through holistic assessment skills, including intuitive awareness. And last example, for Caritas process number 3, to develop that intuitive sense and that embracing that all way of knowing in a non-judgmental way could be an advanced level student may journal about a challenging patient encounter, examining her own emotional response and biases when caring for patients whose life choices might differ from their own, continuously refining their ability to provide compassionate care without imposing personal judgment. And a formative assessment might be a peer reflection circle discussing challenging cases and bias examination with facilitated feedback. And a summative assessment might be a case study presentation demonstrating sophisticated integration of multiple knowledge sources. So we are going to stop there because we want to leave time for questions and dialogue. And again, I don't know if Gloria or the team has shared you, but we do have the, essentials article that came out with all sorts of resources and learning activities and examples for you. And then Gloria wanted me to share quickly. Gina and I, and Gloria's working with us now as well, is we have developed examples or sub-competencies for the 10 Caritas processes and aligned them to the developed and well-developed language of AACN and not our informative, and transformative that we'd prefer, but we're trying to meet AACN where they are. And so these are ways that we can then begin to measure students' ability to apply the 10 Caritas processes in both didactic courses where perhaps they're working in discussion groups or reviewing case studies together, or in clinical practice. So then we're not just measuring the empirical and the cognitive and psychomotor ways of learning, but this is where we can bring the affective domains of learning in and invite effective learning into the classroom and clinical space. All right. And we have tables for both undergraduate or entry level and advanced level learning. All right, so maybe we'll stop slide share. I have no idea where we are on time here. Oh, it's almost out of
Any questions? Melanie, you have your hand up.
I was clapping.
Oh, okay.
Well, I suspect a lot of you are already doing a lot of this, and that's fabulous. We were trying to put a framework around it and create ideas and guidance for folks. But all of this is the essentials article is already out, and this other Caritas process got checklist guideline is under it's in press now, so I will share it when it comes out. But we really, the whole point of this is to bring disciplinary nursing knowledge and that effective learning, that heart-centered learning back in balance with the psychomotor and the cognitive learning. Yeah.
Any other questions?
I have a question. Sarah and Danny, this presentation was amazing. It's so easy to follow and your examples are just wonderful. Will there be an opportunity for you to present this at a broader national level, like at an AACN future conference, or is there anything in the works about that?
Well, we did present it already last October 2024, but actually, Danny, I forgot. We got a
Yeah.
we got an email from Susan Corbridge last week asking us to present it again. So yeah, stay tuned, right, Danny?
Yes, we do have that opportunity. So I don't know if they want even more. I think maybe they're wanting even more, Sarah, like to build on this. So
Yeah.
Well, and the thing about, the conferences, there's so many all year long, and not everybody can attend the same conference each year. So someone might have not heard you the last time, and there could be many who would like to hear you because they're going the next time. So that's great.
Sure.
And the more people you can reach, as your time allows, of course, the better off, and we'll all be open to new ideas. So it was wonderful. Thank you so much for being here tonight.
You.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Any more questions?
No, just wanted to add a comment that I just want to just thank both of you, Sarah and Danny, for your courage, because this work, it requires courage, As I was reading an article recently, and it was from Marlene Smith. She talks about the existential crisis of nursing and how we're going to have to integrate that disciplinary knowledge to bring nursing back to the structure that it deserves. But too often in our the nursing profession and the culture of nursing, there seems to be a fear base to even talk about anything that may be revolutionary or evolutionary. That's why, you know, in the beginning, I talked about this song, a favorite song, Willy Wonka, Imagination. We're going to have to reimagine this. If we want to continue to have a profession and discipline, you know, we're going to have to do something differently, because the status quo is very obvious that the status quo is no longer working. So I commend each of you who even have the courage to even connect with this presentation, because the bottom line is that what we're doing is not working. You know, it's not working at all. So we have to continue to advocate for, and it may not be Watson carrying science, you know, Marlene Smith, you know, Terry carrying science, Parsi's well becoming. And this is, I'm a doctoral student too. And I became a student in retirement. So can you imagine, you know, as a seasoned person going back to school, but, and I'm enjoying the process. However, the concern is that the advocacy for, even in doctoral dissertation, how there's a tendency to still focus on the empirical methodology as opposed to ontological, qualitative ontological methodology. So until we continue to engage in dialogue at this level, nothing will ever change. So thank you all for having the courage, both of you all, because I know Danny is the dean of his program. And to have the courage, you also have to lead by example. So I want to thank both of you all for leading by example.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you. And thank you all for coming and showing up, because I know you see the need to do things differently. I was recently reading an article that, you know, the whole idea of should we be teaching professional identity, because professional identity is really based on a white middle class view of what professional identity is, and talks about the need to be teaching authenticity. And how do we teach authenticity? And I thought how beautifully that aligned with caring science, that what we need to do is show up as our authentic selves, right? And to really change nursing education, we have to be able to be solid in our authentic selves, be solid in our ability to care for ourselves in order to really care for our students and to create those transformative spaces. So yeah, so I think for me, it's all about how can we be more really authentic and real with our students so they can go out and be real and authentic with their patients, right? Yeah.
And you know, Sarah and Danny, I just want to say that who's guiding us or me are the students for sure, because they're yeah, you know, they're asking for that love and that, you know, practicing loving kindness, and they want to get positive feedback, and they just thrive on it. So thank you, because by weaving it in to the essentials, it's there for us, and we can now say, well, it's in AACN Essentials. We need caring science. So, and we need it. We need to fill our own cups so we could teach our students and love on our students. So thank you both.
And love on each other. Yes. Yes.
We need more love, that's for sure.
We need more love. Wonderful. Thank you all so much.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank
you guys. It was great.
Take care and keep spreading the light. Okay.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
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 Thank
Thanks
you.
so much.
Bye-bye.